She yanked the blanket straight off my sister's shoulders and snapped, "You don't deserve first-class comfort." My sister froze. The whole cabin went quiet. The woman leaned closer and added, "I paid taxes in this country. People like you should be grateful just to sit here." I stood up fast, heart pounding, but my sister lightly grabbed my wrist, telling me to stay calm. The woman smirked like she owned the plane, waving her finger. "Flight attendant," she yelled. "This blanket is airline property. She stole it." The flight attendant walked over, eyes sharp, voice calm. "Ma'am, that blanket was assigned to her seat." The woman laughed loudly. "No, I know the rules. I'm part of an HOA board back home. I deal with rule breakers every day." She crossed her arms, proud. My sister slowly pulled her passport from her bag, hands shaking. The woman glanced at it and scoffed. "Figures," she muttered. That's when the flight attendant noticed the name on the passport, paused for half a second, then looked back at my sister with a different expression. My sister said nothing, just stared out the window, jaw tight. The woman leaned closer again and whispered, "I'll have you removed when we land." The flight attendant straightened up and said one sentence that changed the air in the cabin. "Ma'am, you might want to sit down before this gets worse." And that's when the woman's smile finally faded. The woman rolled her eyes and dropped into her seat, but she didn't stop. She pulled out her phone and started recording my sister. "Look at this," she said loudly. "They give special treatment now." A few passengers shifted uncomfortably. One man shook his head. My sister stayed quiet, hands folded, breathing slow. I could tell she was holding something back. A few minutes later, the woman stood again, this time blocking the aisle. "I want her blanket taken now," she said. "Or I'll file a complaint with the airline and airport." "Police!" The word police landed heavy. My sister flinched. That's when the flight attendant's tone changed. Not loud, but firm. "Ma'am, you're disturbing the cabin." The woman laughed again. "Disturbing? I'm protecting my rights." She pointed at my sister. "She's not even supposed to be here." That line made my sister finally look up. Her eyes were calm but cold. She reached into her bag and slowly took out a folded document, resting it on her lap without opening it. I noticed the seal on the corner. The flight attendant noticed it too. Before anything else could be said, another attendant leaned in and whispered something to her. The first attendant nodded once. Then she turned back to the woman and said quietly, "Ma'am?" "Last warning." The woman crossed her arms again and snapped, "Or what?" The answer didn't come from the flight attendant. It came from the captain's voice over the intercom. "Is there a problem in the forward cabin?" the captain asked. His voice was calm but serious. The woman's face lit up like she'd won. She waved both hands. "Yes, there's a passenger causing issues and stealing airline property." She pointed again at my sister. The flight attendant didn't speak right away. She picked up the folded document from my sister's lap and opened it just enough to read the top line. Her posture changed, straight, alert, respectful. She handed it back and said softly, "Thank you, ma'am." That one word, "ma'am," hit different. The woman frowned. "What is that?" she demanded. "I want to see it." The flight attendant shook her head. "You don't need to." That's when the woman raised her voice. "I know my rights. I'll have your job for this." The captain's voice came back sharper now. "Ma'am in seat 2B, sit down immediately." The woman froze. "How do you know my seat?" she asked. No answer. Just silence. Heavy silence. My sister finally spoke, quiet but steady. "Please sit down. I don't want this to get worse." That did it. The woman snapped. "Worse? For who? You?" She laughed. But no one else did. A man across the aisle slowly pulled out his phone. Someone behind us whispered, "Uh-oh." The flight attendant leaned in close to the woman and said, low enough that only nearby seats could hear, "She's not just a passenger." The woman's smile cracked. The woman swallowed and forced a laugh. "Not just a passenger?" she said. "This is a plane, not a movie." She sat down, but her hands were shaking now. The flight attendant stepped back and signaled to another crew member, who quietly moved toward the cockpit. My sister closed her eyes for a moment like she was counting. Then she looked at me and whispered, "I told you not to react." I didn't answer. I was watching the woman, who kept glancing around, trying to read faces. No one looked friendly anymore. A few minutes passed. Too quiet. Then the captain's voice came again, slower this time. We will be met by airport security upon landing. The woman shot up halfway from her seat. Security? For her, she said, pointing again. The flight attendant shook her head. No, ma'am. For you. The color drained from the woman's face. That's ridiculous, she snapped. What did I even do? The flight attendant didn't raise her voice. You harassed a passenger, interfered with crew duties, and made false claims. She paused. And there's more. My sister finally unfolded the document in her lap. It wasn't a passport page. It was an official credential. The seal caught the light. A few passengers leaned closer. The woman's eyes locked onto it wide. You threatened the family of a federal witness, the flight attendant said. On a recorded flight. The woman's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The woman started talking fast now. Witness? Federal? You people are crazy. She reached for her phone again, but her hands slipped. The phone hit the floor. No one helped her. My sister folded the document back and slid it into her bag like it was nothing. She looked calm, almost tired. The flight attendant stayed beside her, not moving an inch. Another crew member stood near the aisle, blocking the way forward. The woman leaned toward me and whispered, What did she tell them? I didn't answer. I just looked at the blanket still resting on my sister's shoulders. That blanket she tried to steal. The captain spoke one last time before landing. All passengers remain seated after arrival. The woman shook her head slowly. This is a mistake, she kept saying. I know people. I'll sue everyone. But her voice was weak now. As the plane touched down, 2 uniformed officers were already visible through the window. The seatbelt sign stayed on. The flight attendant turned to my sister and said quietly, You're free to leave first. Then she looked at the woman and said something that made several passengers smile. You picked the wrong person, over the wrong blanket. The officers stepped onto the plane, calm but focused. One of them asked a simple question. Who is the passenger causing the disturbance? No one pointed at my sister. Not one person. Instead, eyes turned toward the woman in silence. That silence said everything. She stood up slowly, trying to smile. This is all a misunderstanding, she said. I was just asking for a blanket. One officer looked down at the phone lying near her feet. Ma'am, we already reviewed the footage. Her smile vanished. What footage? She asked, voice cracking. The flight attendant nodded toward the ceiling. Every word, every threat. The officer gently asked the woman to step into the aisle. She hesitated, then whispered, She provoked me. My sister didn't even look at her. She was holding my hand now, steady. As the woman was escorted forward, a passenger behind us said softly, That was hard to watch. Another replied, No. It was necessary. The woman turned once, eyes wild, and said, You think you won? My sister finally spoke. Just one line, calm and sharp. You did this to yourself. They took her off the plane while everyone watched. No shouting now. No power left. Just small steps and red eyes. At the door, she tried one last thing. She looked at the officer and said, She lied. Check who she really is. The officer didn't even turn back. We already did. When the door closed, the cabin exhaled like it had been holding its breath the whole time. A few people clapped. Someone said, About time. My sister pulled the blanket tighter. Not because she was cold, but because her hands were shaking now. That's when I realized how much she had held in. The flight attendant knelt beside her and said quietly, You handled that with class. My sister nodded. I didn't have a choice. She looked at the empty seat where the woman had been and added, People like her never stop unless someone does. As we stood to leave, a man near the aisle said something that stuck with me. She thought she was powerful, but power doesn't scream. As we walked through the terminal, people kept looking at my sister with quiet respect. No one asked questions. They didn't need to. The truth had already spoken loud enough. Near the exit, the flight attendant caught up to us one last time. She smiled and said, I hope you both have a peaceful day. My sister smiled back, small but real. Outside, the noise of the airport rushed in like the world moving on. My sister finally stopped and took a deep breath. I hate that it still surprises me, she said softly, how fast people judge. I looked at the blanket folded over her arm and said, "She thought it was about comfort." My sister nodded. "No," she said. "It was about control." We walked away together, untouched, safe, and standing tall. And one thought stayed with me the whole way out. Some people mistake loud voices for power, until real power stays calm and walks free. Outside the terminal, we were almost at the parking lot when my sister's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and stopped walking. Just one message. She read it, then exhaled slowly. I asked, "Everything okay?" She nodded. "She's being charged, interfering with flight crew, and a hate-related report." I looked back toward the glass doors. The woman was still inside, talking fast to someone in a suit now. No cameras, no audience, no power. My sister wrapped the blanket tighter around her arm and said quietly she thought she could take something small, and no one would stop her. She turned to me and added one last thing, almost like a reminder to herself. People like that don't lose because someone yells back. They lose when the rules finally apply to them. We got in the car and drove away, calm, free. And somewhere behind us, a woman finally learned a lesson she couldn't complain her way out of as we pulled onto the highway, the city lights flickering past. My sister finally let herself relax. She looked at me and smiled, tired but victorious. "I can't believe that just happened," she said. I laughed quietly. "Believe it. You handled it perfectly." Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from the airline. "Complaint reviewed. Passenger removed. Refund issued," crew commended. She stared at it for a moment, then whispered, "Justice." Finally. I glanced at her, proud. "You didn't need to fight. You just stayed calm." She shook her head. "No, I had to show her that some things, respect, rules, decency, aren't optional." As we drove past the empty streets, I realized the lesson wasn't just about a blanket. It was about standing up quietly, letting the truth and the law do the work. And even from the back of a plane or the front of an airport, the right kind of power always wins. Then out of nowhere, my sister smirked and said, "Next time, maybe I'll let her try stealing my seat too." I laughed. The city lights reflected off the windshield. And for the first time that day, everything felt completely ours. As we reached home, the adrenaline finally faded. My sister carefully folded the blanket and placed it in the living room. She sat down on the couch and shook her head. I can't believe how bold she was, thinking a blanket could give her power. I poured us both a drink and sat beside her. People like her don't understand one thing. They can't fake authority. Forever. She smiled faintly, eyes still sharp. "No," she said. "And they underestimate patience. Calm, quiet patience, backed by proof." Just then, my phone buzzed. A video clip had gone viral, passengers recording the entire incident on the plane. Comments were flooding in. "That woman got what she deserved." "Flight attendant is a hero." "Justice served without violence." My sister leaned back, shaking her head in disbelief. I nudged her gently. "Looks like your calm won more than just the plane." She laughed softly, and for the first time that day, she allowed herself to feel victorious. Then she whispered almost to herself, "Some people try to take what isn't theirs, but the truth always lands first." And with that, we finally relaxed, knowing the day's battle had ended, and the real power had always been ours. The woman was escorted off the plane, powerless and red-faced. My sister held the blanket tight, calm, and unshaken. The flight attendant whispered, "You handled that perfectly." She smiled faintly. "Some people try to take what isn't theirs, but the truth always lands first." We walked out together, safe, victorious, and free, while the woman finally learned that entitlement can't overpower justice.